We have spent millennia to create great business models. They are great for the old world, but will they still dominate in the future? Welcome to watch the Sustainability Trends in Business. Let's share some ideas regarding sharing economy. As the world around us changes, our economies reflect that change. They have always done so. New business models emerge and old business models may become less relevant. Digitalization obviously has created new opportunities. Look at banks, financial businesses, insurance companies, whatever. Their business is very digital and very different from what it was a couple of decades ago. But not all business models looking new are actually new. For example, the internet is full of online shops selling everything, but this is just an extension of mail order business. This catalogue is from a Canadian business in 1884, and it is not the first one. First is a bit disputed, but Welsh Price Jones had a countrywide next day delivery business in 1861. There were two important pieces of infrastructure ready by then. One of them was railways and the other one was fast mail service. At that time in the UK, mail deliveries were made several times a day, up to 10 times, 12 times a day, and same-day mail delivery was common within urban areas. And it's been all downhill after that, I know. But of course, communications is faster today because we have digital or electronic communication. But the turnaround time for ordering stuff is not that different. It seems that the rise of online shopping is more about ease of seeing the catalogs than about the logistics of ordering or receiving the orders, deliveries. And then of course it is about globalization. Well, something that is really new is different as a service businesses. Software of course is as a service, but also we have entertainment as a service, Netflix for example, Spotify and so on. Social media is a new thing and marketing around it is a new business area. Of course, regarding sustainability, social media may be a bit of a question mark. Think of Shane, think of Teemu. But it is of course important for any B2C business to consumer business as a communication channel. When looking at easy data flow in broader sense, it facilitates a lot of as-a-service businesses where material assets are turned from investment to service. So the benefit comes from data and preventive maintenance. Also, if the vendor of some hardware has the hardware in their balance sheet, then they have a high incentive to create reliable and easy to fix stuff, which is a good thing from the sustainability point of view. Just an example, which doesn't actually exist in wide extent in that form. If a car is owned by the car manufacturer throughout its life, not the user but the manufacturer, then of course there is an incentive to make the car very reliable and very easy to repair, as there is no cash flow from after sales. Now there is huge cash flow from spare parts and so on. And of course this would reflect into insurances, and the car manufacturer could become an insurance company as well, and so on. So the advent of life cycle thinking is very important. This as a service is part of that. Of course this could have been done a long ago, but the important point is data, which makes maintenance more efficient. Of course, as a realist, I have to say that we are mostly at the point of collecting a lot of data from different sources. Making use of it is still sort of a promise and still coming. Maybe the most common example of new business models is sharing economy. At least it's the most famous example, and there are a lot of definitions to it, but let's wiki. The sharing economy is a socio-economic system built around the sharing of resources. It often involves a way of purchasing goods and services that differs from the traditional business model of companies hiring employees to produce products to sell to consumers. So we talk about buying, selling, hiring and so on. A lot of changes. But as this is economics, this is not science, this leaves a lot of room for interpretation and of course for disagreement. Loosely speaking, what we are talking about is C2C, consumer-to-consumer business model. Traditional models are business-to-consumer B2C or B2B. business to business, but here we have something provided by consumers. Of course, this is actually the traditional way of doing things. Centuries back, you just exchanged stuff with your neighbor. So why have we had businesses then if we come from this C2C for centuries? Due to efficiency. A lot of arbitrage that can be exploited, and now the arbitrage can be exploited by digital tools. It might mean that there is no need for merchants in the process as the middlemen. This is a big promise in sharing economy. If the good to be shared would exist in any case, sharing carries zero marginal cost. So if we're sharing something that we own in any case, then there is no cost of sharing. For example, if I have a hammer in my cupboard and someone would need it, using my hammer instead of buying another hammer would be a win-win-win for me, the one using it, and nature. And as always, it's a bit more difficult in practice. Who will take the arbitrage? Because certainly there is something. There are different schools about this. In the strict sense, we may have a non-profit sharing. I just hand my hammer to my neighbor. Of course, there are all sorts of insurance and transaction costs there, so doing this without money wouldn't fly in large scale, or then we're truly in the ideological domain outside of market economy. Another possibility would be to do it as cooperative sharing. There have been a lot of initiatives in labor sharing. For example, if I look after your flowers when you're away, you will walk my dog. Or then there may be an exchange of goods, sort of a pool of stuff. We all own this together, and we all know how that ends up in communism. But anyway, we all own this together and we can loan from there. But obviously, the problem there is how to make this fair so that we all give and receive approximately the same amount. And very often these systems tend to slip into getting points or vouchers for doing something. And now these points or vouchers are another name for currency. It's money, and Mr. Taxman is not at all happy about this kind of sharing. The border between neighbor help and taxable work is not a clear one, but if the exchange is organized, it's usually on the taxable side. And then we have a third view into sharing economy, which is facilitating it for a profit, creating a platform for sharing economy. Online marketplace for selling and buying goods. We have seen a lot of them. It is not clear if this is true sharing economy. It depends again on the definition of sharing economy, but I include it here because most examples are in that field. Sharing economy, by the way, is usually not about services, it's about goods. Why is that? Because we don't have services just floating around, extra services. I just have one extra cleaning here which no one is going to use. Doesn't happen. But I may have that hammer. The lines are a bit difficult to draw. For-profit B2B sharing services have existed for a long time between businesses because businesses don't like to have useless things in their balance sheet. They try to find some use for that, rent it out or something. For-profit B2C, business to consumer sharing has also existed, but it's called rental. And the goods rented are not usually useless per se, but they are bought for that. So it's not really sharing economy. C2C, consumer to consumer, is the real disruption, but even that has often some flavor of C to B2C. Oh, that's a tongue bender. A consumer to consumer, so their contracts are actually between consumers and a business. This is partly due to our legal framework, which expects consumers to have a business as a counterpart, or otherwise consumer rights are not the same. But let's look into the C2C, because it's the most interesting one, whether it's C2C or C2B2C. We truly have a lot of underutilized resources. And we need one, and then we need to make the connection between the resource and someone needing that resource. And this is the disruptive thing facilitated by digitalization. This is the new thing, the connection between something unused and someone who needs it. Now it is done by marketplaces, all sorts of eBays and that kind of thing. But new digital tools may make this much easier My hypothesis is that the interaction between parties doesn't need to have human. If you have sold anything online on these marketplaces, you know that it's a lot of hassle, people contacting you and saying that I'll take I won't take it, I'll take it if I get it tomorrow, and all that negotiation and discussion, which take a lot of time, and it's a hindrance. By the way, I hate it if you didn't notice. And that can be handed to digital tools, that is sort of AI. There are some specific questions to be solved in C2C, which are not that important or not that unclear in B2C. Trust is the important one. Will I be robbed, for example? I loan something, I don't get it back. It sounds scary, but this is an example from Australia. Victoria Police has established special zones for exchange of items sold and bought online, well-lit areas with 24/7 CCTV surveillance. Another aspect of trust is, will my property be damaged? Do I get my hammer back scratched or broken? And what would be the ordinary wear and tear for whatever I've loaned? This trust can be tackled with strong identification of individuals and, of course, different rating methods, giving stars to the other party or points or whatever. It's doable and it's been done, but it needs thinking and it really needs some concentration to get it right. Another question is related to the items themselves. It's not just a cordless drill, for example. There are 30 euro cordless drills and there are 300 euro cordless drills, and they are completely different tools. And also the tool can be brand new or it can be very worn. If you get a cordless drill with flat battery which doesn't hold its charge, then it's not that useful. All this may have an impact on its utility or the utility of the good we are exchanging here, and standardizing that is difficult. This needs to be tackled in communications, and again, digital tools may help. For example, I need to hang a painting on the wall is a bit different from I build a fence, while both tasks may require a similar tool. But let's look at some real cases. While there is a lot of activity under sharing economy, flourishing C2C is actually not that common. We'll start by Airbnb, the obvious one. Airbnb, to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. The shared resource is accommodation. If an empty home can be rented, resource saving is clear, heating and so on, saved compared to hotels. This provides cash flow for the homeowner and of course it's environmentally friendly, win-win. In practice, Airbnb has become B2C accommodation service, so it's a professional service. Its competitive advantage is largely circumventing legislation related to professional accommodation, and it has been criticized for making local people's life more difficult in tourist destinations. There has been a lot of unrest and demonstrations lately regarding this, and it's not limited to Spain. Rovaniemi, a 60,000 people city at the Arctic Circle, saw a demonstration against Airbnb just a couple of months ago. So from the sustainability point of view, Airbnb makes tourism more affordable and thus increases flying. It's not a net positive thing in the environmental perspective. Of course, the social perspective is different because it enables traveling for poorer people. Then the next example, couch surfing. We are here to make the world better, to enhance each other's lives and to become stronger in that purpose by coming together. Share resource is again the same, accommodation, home, and it's much closer to the sharing idea because in couchsurfing people live in other people's home when their hosts are at home. They sleep on the sofa, hence the name. No risk of B2C because there is one host, one guest, and the host is present there, and there is a strong social aspect. This also creates cash flow for the host to cover their living expenses and creates inexpensive accommodation for travelers. Unfortunately, the model is very challenging from the trust point of view. To put it bluntly, there is a shortage of female hosts and female guests. Well, this is not something we would like to think about or talk about. Businesses have to live in the environment where they are. Good idea, but commercially difficult. Couchsurfing started as a volunteer group and it turned into ad-funded, and now it's subscription-based, and it really struggles. Homes are one investment, but so our cars are big investments as well. Our cars stay parked 90+% of time in average. There is clearly a lot of unused resource available, or at least exists a lot of unused resource. A lot of business has been tried around this, Uber being the most well-known, to reimagine the way the world moves for the better. Shared resource here is cars and drivers. This can be used to provide inexpensive ride services and very flexible income for car owners who have some extra time. What could go wrong? Well, B2C. Uber has become taxi service 2.0, where drivers are professionals. It competes with taxi services and it has difficulties with legislation. The position of drivers may not be that good. Wage earners are turned into entrepreneurs, which reflects in social security, for example. From the environmental point of view, offering more inexpensive ride services increases their use, and it's an environmental burden. And it's often a shift from public transportation, walking, cycling. However, this side, social question, is a more difficult one. Does this offer a stepping stone job for an immigrant, for example? Those jobs may be very valuable in any society. Also, the lower cost of transportation enables the use for those who cannot use public transportation easily, for example, people with disabilities, elderly, and so on. And that would be a positive thing from the social point of view. And then, not necessarily directly related to sharing economy, but Uber does demonstrate flexible workforce, which may be the future. Did we want it or not? Well, if we rent the cars without drivers, then we don't have the Uber problem. Then we have, for example, GoMore, which is a Danish peer rental company operating in several EU countries, also in Finland. Share cars to take better care of our planet. So the resource is private cars, those that are standing there 90% of the time without doing anything, just taking up some space. The benefit is clear: inexpensive rental cars and cash flow for the car owner. Well, not unsurprisingly, we bump into trust. Would you give your car to someone else? Most people would seem to give their girl or boyfriend before their car. This can be covered by insurance, I mean the car, not the boy girlfriends, to a certain extent, but how about the coffee spots on the seats? Sand on the floor? Also, the real potential is far away from that 90%. My car is in my garage during the night, but who would need it? I need it for commuting, but so do everyone else. So if I wanted to commute with these cars, that would be very difficult because there wouldn't be any available. There are a lot of cars available, yes, but they are at the wrong time, in the wrong place. Then there are some regulatory issues. Rental cars usually have different rules. There may be more frequent inspection requirements, or insurances are different. Again, part of the business may be trying to avoid costs of professional operations. An interesting snippet from GoMore's webpage. Some car owners on GoMore share multiple cars. We give them best tools and expertise to grow their car sharing business. Wait a minute, this sounds like a car rental franchise. B2C, not sharing economy. Well, GoMore's business hasn't been that great. It's rather small. It's a loss-making business despite its 10-year journey. So it's not scaling very fast, if at all. Well, with these slightly pessimistic cases, do I then think sharing economy is dead and bad? No, that's not the conclusion. The theoretical potential is still huge and even larger with the advent of new digital tools, which reduce the hassle of exchanging things. The main problem here may be a social one. We are not used to sharing. And then there is this clear business tendency of B2C-fication of platform. And there is also the slight hint of making businesses profitable by not following all the rules. AirBnB is a prime example. For example, hotels have completely different safety requirements than residential buildings. And so leveling the field is an important task for the regulators, but of course hopefully the regulators are thinking of leveling the field, not saying that we'll forbid all this new stuff because it requires something new. From the impact point of view, sharing economy can be great or disastrous, depending on what is shared. Tourism has a lot of environmental side effects, and their sharing economy seems to be flourishing. AirBnB, Uber, so on. On the other hand, social and environmental impact are different things. From the environmental point of view, it's clear. Poor people, stay at home, don't travel. From the social point of view, I think it would be more that poor or rich, don't travel. So my conclusion is that sharing economy is a great tool, but we don't yet understand where it fits best and how to do it. As new tools give new opportunities, this field would definitely be worth exploring and research, despite that taking us sometimes to very uncomfortable, non-politically correct areas. So these examples were traditional, if you can talk about traditional sharing economy businesses. There is also something called platform co-ops. The idea behind cooperative is that producers and or consumers own it. Sometimes producers, sometimes consumers, but possibly both. And the value added is shared by them. There are large coop retail chains owned by consumers. There are large banks, insurance companies, agricultural producer cooperatives, and so on, all over the world. But platform co-ops are digital platforms owned by producers or consumers. Think of Uber or Wolt or Dash owned by the workers themselves. That would solve a lot of social issues there. There are some examples in the world. A lot of them are highly ideological, for example, Fairmondo, AirBnB, as you can hear from the name. But one interesting is Up and Go Cleaning Cooperative in the US. The idea of Up and Go is that it is a cleaning company owned by the cleaning professionals, and it is a platform based, so the consumers or the customers are communicating with the professionals through a platform. Unfortunately, it's extremely difficult to come by any financial numbers or information on the business size or profitability. It cannot be very small, but whether it's large or huge, difficult to say. But the idea here is that by this platform, the revenue share between the platform and the cleaning professional is much fairer. It's like 5% for the platform, 95% for the cleaning professional. Sounds great. Ride sharing is another possibility, so think of Uber owned by drivers. There are some examples. For example, the Denver Green Taxi had at one point 40% share of Denver rides. That's a lot. It was owned by the drivers. And as you can notice, I talk about it in the past tense because unfortunately the company folded a couple of years back. It seems that cost of creating a good platform and defending the position against aggressive VC-backed companies, for example Uber, is truly difficult. So platform co-ops do not seem to be an easy field, but there is a lot of promise, especially from the S perspective. An interesting observation is that there are a lot of cooperatives outside of the wealthy West, for example in Latin America, and those co-ops will digitalize, and they have already some of them digitalized as well. So this might be something that the global South may be faster to adopt than the wealthy West. So how will future businesses look like? My own guess is that digitalization will lead us to more loosely coupled organizations and businesses, and this may drive transition towards different platforms, be they cooperatives or sharing economy. But only time will tell. Thank you for watching. See you next time.